Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Raptors. I am still working on getting this bird on his perch, so I figured we'd get some nice close-up views right now. I'm kind of getting him situated here on the perch behind us. So this is our resident, or one of our resident male American kestrels, which I point out the male part since for most raptors, very difficult to tell the males and the females apart. The females tend to be bigger. The kind of difference that makes kind of depends on the species. But there really aren't too many color differences. But for the American kestrel, they're one of the few exceptions to that general rule. So you can see this American kestrel, he's got these wonderful kind of bluish, kind of slate blue wings. And then on his belly, we're gonna get to our nice tall perch here in a minute. On his belly, he's got these really nice polka dots, whereas the females tend to have the kind of brownish stripes on their bellies, and then their wings tend to also have these nice brown and black stripes. So the males have a little bit more of the flashy coloring so they can show other American kestrels in the area or any potential predators. They can kind of distract them and make that nice territorial claim. Whereas the females are a little bit more well camouflaged so that they can stay a little bit safer, sneak in and out of the holes in dead trees, nest boxes, caves, inside of barns, places like that, wherever it is that they have their nest. They're usually looking for those nice kind of cavity nesting areas. And I bring them up too because this is the time of year where, at least here in the upper Midwest, we're seeing a lot more of these American kestrels. Here in Minnesota, they usually are down south for the winter, and then they come back up for the spring and summer and then early fall. So they just got back in the last month or so. I know I've been seeing them over the last couple of weeks. Here's that nice kind of close-up view of that American kestrel kind of fluffing out those feathers. I also, since he's nice and up close, you can see the really nice, what we call the Mallard Stripe, these nice dark stripes under his eyes. We actually named this bird Mallard after those dark stripes. We see those nice perches that we want to go fly to here, I think. So those nice dark stripes really help act like nice built-in sunglasses for these birds. They're falcons, they're members of the falcon family, the smallest falcons here in North America. So they need those nice dark built-in sunglasses with those nice Mallard stripes. That's what's gonna help them hunt during the middle of the day in those big open areas. Falcons tend to be hunting during the middle of the day when it's really bright outside. And so they really need to be able to see what's going on around them during the daytime. Oh no, I may have got the wrong swivel. Let's see if this will fit on there. It's not gonna fit on there. Slight technical difficulties, the swivel here that I grabbed, so this is the little piece of equipment that I use to, it's like at the top of all the leashes that we use and things like that. The one that I grabbed has a very tiny bottom. It's not quite fitting where I want it to. So I'm just gonna pop him here for right now. We'll just kind of free loft him in here. I'm gonna quick see if I can spot another one. Otherwise, he's just gonna be free lofted in here for today, and if he decides to go hang out on a different perch, we'll see if we can get him back. So let me just take a look around and see if I can see one. Otherwise, we'll get started with our book. I'm not seeing one. So he's just gonna be free lofted in here. So I'm just gonna maybe adjust this a little bit then. So that way we have a nice little angle so you can still see our book. So I've got a couple little pieces of food for him here to say, hey, nice work working on that. So we'll look at a couple different views of different angles of him as we go along here. So he's gonna work on that. Like I said, if he decides to go somewhere else in the room, we'll try to get him back over here. He seems pretty interested in the food that we have, so we'll get him back. So speaking of some other great kind of springtime, summertime migrants, today I found a book that I've been kind of saving for springtime. And now here in the upper Midwest, the weather hasn't been especially springy this week, but we're getting there. We're seeing lots of our migratory birds coming back. We're gonna be seeing even more of them over the next coming kind of weeks and months. So one of my favorite kind of non-raptor species, I really enjoy seeing bluebirds. So I found this book called Blue Sky Bluebird by Rick Chrustowski, and we're gonna read that today. So a little bit different from our raptor friends, but they are another set of cavity nesters, just like our American kestrels. And he's got a little blue on his wings. Figured it would work. So we're gonna be reading this. It already has this really delightful illustration here on the cover of this bluebird, this eastern bluebird. So let's take a look and learn a little bit more about bluebirds. Here is the first page of this again. Again, this is Blue Sky Bluebird by Rick Chrustowski. You can see a nice bright blue bluebird holding what looks like a nice little worm, maybe a little inchworm in its beak as it flies through the air. Here is another picture. This is on the kind of dedication page. You can see this really beautiful kind of, looks like almost like a farmhouse, a couple of chickens out under a big tree. There's a horse in the background. And here we have a lovely built bluebird house. It's actually really similar in style to what we might have for American kestrels and a lot of other kind of cavity nesting birds. But it's got a nice kind of top on it, nice slanted top, a nice hole in the middle. You can see the male with those really bright blue wings kind of coming in with some food, and then it looks like the female here with a nice little bunch of kind of hay or straw or grass in her beak. She's probably using to line that nest. So this is kind of the idea of the kind of habitat where you often see them. I actually have, there are some that nest kind of on my street where I live. So they're not always necessarily looking for big rural areas. You can actually find them near a lot of our city parks, especially here in Minnesota. They like to nest right near kind of one of my small local city parks. So that's where you can usually see them, even here in the cities. So one spring day, when the ground is a carpet of green, a pair of bluebirds arrive at their summer home. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. He decided to go land on top of a TV monitor that we have over there. So I'll see if I can ask him to come back over here. Sorry, folks, he's standing on top of a pile of chairs. I wish I could turn this around to show you, but I think it'd be a little clunky, so we'll see if I can just come over here. He's on top of the handle. We got a brand new tripod that has a handle that's sticking up out of it, and he was standing on top of it. Okay, later on today after this, I'll see if I can get a good picture of him standing on top of there, and we'll post it. Because that was delightful. Sorry, I need to start having multiple cameras up if I'm gonna have birds free lofted in here so you guys can see all of this while it's happening. So we'll stay tuned for further antics from this American kestrel as he kind of explores the room. So, where were we? One spring day, when the ground is a carpet of green, we're just gonna let him move around. We'll get him back here in a little bit. A pair of bluebirds arrive at their summer home. After they mate, the female weaves layers of coarse grass into a circle inside their nest box. Then she presses her body into the middle to make a cup. An egg forms inside of her body as she works. Just before it is laid, the egg turns as blue as summer sky. So here is that nest box. You can see this is the view of the inside of the nest box. You can see the female with her kind of muted blue colors, a little bit more grayish, forming this nest, weaving all these grasses together, making a little cup in the middle. And here's the male bringing in a delicious little inchworm to eat. Come back over here. Trying to not touch the food and then touch the book too much. It's no good. So here we have our eggs. Each morning at dawn, the female lays a new egg until there are 4 in her clutch. She stays on her nest for the next 2 weeks, leaving only for short trips to get water and stretch her wings. Nestled under the female's warm belly, tiny chicks begin to grow inside the eggs. Here's what those eggs look like in that nest, that beautiful blue color. Here's a peek inside an egg. The egg starts when a yolk sac forms inside the mother's body. The embryo, or developing chick, first appears as a small white bump on the yolk. The yolk is wrapped in egg white, and finally a shell is formed. So here's that tiny little white speck. That's the very beginning of a baby bluebird, with the nice kind of nutrients in the yolk there, and then the shell around it. Once the egg is laid, again, I need to get some pictures of what this bird is doing. He is actively looking, he's on top of one of the computer charger wires. Really looking around. This is some great enrichment. Maybe we'll angle the camera differently at the end of the book so you can see what he's doing. So once the egg is laid, the yolk feeds the growing embryo through a web of blood vessels. After 5 days, the embryo begins to look like a little bird. It has eyes and a beak, stubby wings, and long toes. So You can see here's that baby, that embryo of that young bluebird growing up inside of that egg. You can see it kind of looks like a bird here, still working on it. After 14 days, the egg is a tight fit. The chick pokes its beak into a small chamber of air at one end of the egg and breathes for the first time. Now it is ready to hatch. So you can see now it looks like a bird. Baby bluebirds don't really have too many of those feathers, so it doesn't really totally look like a bird yet, but it's got all the kind of underneath parts that are underneath those feathers. Here we go. Early one morning at the end of May, 3 bluebird chicks break out of their shells. The 4th egg is silent. The mother bluebird leans close to listen. Tap, tap, pip, peep. A chick is hard at work inside. He pecks a line of holes around the top of his shell with a special egg tooth at the tip of his beak. Then he stretches out and pushes his shell open. Naked and helpless, the last baby bluebird flops into the nest. Now he is called a nestling. Soon his egg tooth drops off and tufts of gray fuzz appear on his head and back. In a few hours, he lifts his wobbly head and joins his sisters as they beg for food. So here is that baby bluebird fresh out of the egg, just a few little feathers on his body, but really the rest of him doesn't have any feathers on him. And it's gonna take a little bit for those feathers to kind of fluff out and then start to grow in, that nice kind of fluffy down that will keep them nice and toasty warm. You can see the different sizes here because each of these birds, their eggs were laid and then hatched on different days. So this one in the middle might be 4 or 5 days older than this youngest bird. And that's how much they can grow in just that little short time. So you can see them begging for food. And here they are begging for food again. This is a nice topside view, like you're looking straight down into the nest. 10 days later, the mother and father birds rush food to their young every few minutes from sun up to sundown. Plump caterpillars, leggy spiders, and crunchy grasshoppers disappear in seconds down the chicks' gaping gullets. Between feedings, the nestlings flap their newly feathered wings or nap in a heap for extra warmth. Sometimes the females use their little brother as a step stool to get a better view. If you've ever watched any nest cameras, absolutely you'll see some of the youngsters standing on top of each other. So you can see them poking their heads out, looking for a nice view. Got another little bit here. Say thank you for coming back over. When the nestlings are 19 days old, they take turns peeking out of the entrance hole. They are fully grown now, and the nest is crowded. The mother and father bring in less food. Instead, they dangle insects from their beaks to lure the chicks out of the nest. The oldest chick takes the bait first. She hurries to the entrance hole, hops forward, and out she goes into the world. 20 minutes later, the other 2 females hop out, one after the other. The last chick, the little male with blue wings, refuses to leave. So here you can see our youngster here growing in those nice bright blue wings, staying nice and cozy inside of that nest hole as the other kind of youngsters are lured out with nice bits of food into this beautiful open field where their parents are, kind of waiting to teach them how to fly. His mother pokes her head in and tries to coax him out with a shiny cricket. His father brings him a fat beetle grub. The chick doesn't budge. Hungry and shivering, the bluebird ruffles his feathers like a blanket and sleeps the long night alone in the nest box. So you can see the nice sliver of kind of summer sky outside, and you can see this nice cozy warm bird inside, trying to stay warm on his own for once. When morning comes, the steady thrum of insects fades away. the bluebird hears his parents sing outside. He scrambles to the opening and leans forward, farther, farther. He's out. Wings flapping wildly, the bluebird launches into the air. He is a fledgling at last. Here you can see that first kind of awkward flight that this baby bluebird is making. Again, those beautiful summertime flowers in the background. Maybe he needs a little bit more practice before he's an expert. The gloomy darkness of the nest box is replaced with sunlight and bright summer sky. The bluebird's father swoops in and leads him to the top rail of a fence that surrounds a pasture where grazing horses have kept the grass short. It's a perfect place to teach young birds to hunt their own food. This June morning, animals are restless. They feel a change in the air. Storm clouds are rolling in from the west. So here you have this big open field, some animals around, some insects for them to catch. Here's that Papa Bluebird, holding out looks like a nice little dragonfly for his youngster to eat. So we have storms rolling in though. How are these little birds gonna deal with that? So here is the whole little nest all together. The mother and father bluebirds gather their fledglings in a tree. As the wind shifts direction, heated air pushes clouds higher into the sky. This updraft feeds the clouds, which become giant thunderheads. By late afternoon, raindrops splatter down. The parent bluebirds warble softly to reassure the young. So here are those big dark clouds we're gonna start seeing more and more of here as we get into the summertime. We're gonna see more of those storms rolling in, and we see that rain coming down as these birds nest in what looks like an oak tree based off of the leaves. You see them getting dripped on a little bit, but staying mostly dry. Raindrops become a pelting downpour as the storm erupts. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light streaks across the sky. Kaboom! A crack of thunder rattles the ground. The bluebirds scatter like leaves in the wind. So you see this whole little family scattering as that lightning crashes in the background. We see the leaves getting blown around too. How are those baby bluebirds gonna deal with all of this? Then, as quickly as it started, the storm is over. Sunlight streams through breaks in the clouds. The last heavy raindrops splash to the ground. The bluebirds search for their fledglings. One female is hiding in a cedar tree. Another ducked into a shrub. Another found a tree hole. But the male is missing. His parents call for him. Finally, they see him, feathers soaked, clinging to the spot he was before the storm. So you can see Mom and Dad out looking and then find him. So those are all the different places birds might hide out during a storm. Up against a tree, down in a shrub, maybe inside of a hole in a tree. Back over here. Got a couple little pieces left. For the next few weeks, the bluebird and his sisters follow their father. He shows them how to hunt insects by choosing a low perch and then pouncing to the ground. Once the fledglings can gather food on their own, the parents renew their mating bond. The male flutters his wings like a butterfly, fans his tail, and sings to his mate. The female wing waves and warbles a song of her own. She builds a new nest. Then, perfectly timed with the great supply of insects in the late summer, she lays a second clutch of eggs. So here they are, this beautiful summertime field with lots of insects and lots of plants. You can see them doing their second mating display, kind of starting a new nest. Very busy summer for these bluebirds. In August, after the new chicks hatch, the young bluebird and his sisters help their parents raise the second brood. They practice flying and landing as they chase insects to feed their younger siblings. The whole family works together as a team, feeding the young and watching for predators. Summer lasts just long enough for the new chicks to leave the nest. So you can see you end up with this big kind of cluster of bluebirds all living in the same area by the end of the summer. That's when they're usually kind of the easiest to spot, or at least when I see them, is when you have this kind of whole big family group of bluebirds kind of all living in the same spots. Pretty noisy, and you can see them all kind of flittering around at the end of the summer. These big, open, beautiful fields with all those insects to eat. The bluebird and his siblings lose their juvenile feathers and grow adult plumage by early fall. After a cold snap cuts down the number of insects, the family begins to fly south to their wintering grounds. Along the way, they stop to fuel up on wild grapes and sumac berries. Soon, the fresh growth of spring will call them northward again, and the bluebirds will go their separate ways. Then the young male bluebird will return to the countryside where he was born to look for a mate and a nest box where he can raise a family of his own. So here we have this whole little group of bluebirds flying south for the winter. You can see the colors changing in the background. And those sumac berries and those wild grapes are all kind of growing out right at that time when they need them. So you can see them traveling down to the south to stay warm and find insects all winter long. Here is our last page. It has some great information. Here are the kind of little pictures that are up on here. It has a couple of different bluebirds that you can find around North America. So we have the eastern bluebird, as you might imagine, lives on the kind of eastern half of North America, usually considered kind of east of the Rockies, I believe. And then we have the western bluebird. It looks pretty similar. You can see the family resemblance. These are all kind of cousins of each other, so they look pretty similar. And then down here is the mountain bluebird, who's normally living around the Rocky Mountains. So let's read a little bit more about these. I'll put the book down so you can keep watching whatever our American kestrel gets up to while I read. Bluebirds live in cities and suburbs, but they love the open fields and farm country. The best place to see them is perched on telephone wires or fences along rural roads. Not long ago, bluebirds were hard to find. Their habitat is steadily being replaced by housing developments and strip malls. Invasive birds like starlings and European house sparrows compete with them for nesting cavities in trees. Bird lovers across America are putting up nest boxes made especially for bluebirds. Some people monitor long rows or bluebird trails of nest boxes in prime habitats. Over the years, thousands of young bluebirds have fledged from these boxes, and now the news is good. Bluebirds are making a comeback. Bluebirds are agile songbirds that belong to the thrush family. Like their cousin, the robin, bluebird young have spotted chests. Bluebirds that escape the watchful eyes of hawks, snakes, and raccoons can live to be 5 years old. Bluebirds can be found throughout the United States into Canada and Mexico. There are 3 different kinds of bluebird. All of the females look pretty similar. They are a brownish gray with blue on their wings and tail. The males are distinctly different shades of blue. Eastern bluebirds, like the ones in this book, are cobalt blue and live in the eastern part of North America from the Rocky Mountains east to the Atlantic Ocean. Western bluebirds are a deep purplish blue and live in western North America from the Rocky Mountains west to the Pacific. The largest bluebirds, mountain bluebirds, are sky blue all over. They live in the mountains and higher elevations of western North America. So again, we had the eastern bluebird, like the ones we were seeing in the book. We have our western bluebirds. I don't actually know if I've ever gotten to see any of these in person, but they look like they have this really nice kind of purplish blue. And then the mountain bluebird, this kind of nice kind of light sky blue color, really kind of striking. So this was Blue Sky Bluebird by Rick Chrustowski. Again, a nice kind of change of pace from our raptor books to learn about some other birds. And I really like it because, again, these are cavity nesters. The nest boxes that they live in are really similar to the kind of nest boxes that people will build and put up for a lot of other smaller birds, like American kestrels. Someone I saw in the chat was asking, why is Mallard all puffed up? Which, very good observation. A lot of it right now, kind of based off of the fact that he's preening, he has a foot tucked up and everything. He's decided that this is a pretty safe, kind of comfortable place to hang out. He's been getting some pieces of food over here on this perch, and this is a perch he hangs out on quite a lot. So a lot of it seems to be just comfortable and relaxed. A lot of times, for example, I'm moving my hands down by where food often comes from. So you can see his feathers kind of slicked in a little bit, kind of paying attention. Got to keep an eye on what's going on. You'll see too, if he kind of moves around any bit while we're talking, if he decides to fly to another perch, you'll kind of see him tuck those feathers in, kind of slick them down so that he's nice and aerodynamic for flight. He can cut through the air. But a lot of times when birds are just kind of relaxing, you'll see them kind of puff those feathers out and relax them. Kind of helps keep them a little bit warm. It's a little cool in this room right now. It can also kind of help keep them nice and kind of the right temperature, nice and relaxed, nice and comfy. Again, he's got one foot tucked up. You can see where his jess, those kind of leather straps that kind of are hanging down from his legs, you can see it kind of poking out down there because he's got one foot tucked up underneath those cozy feathers. Right now he's doing some great preening up on his wings and his neck. You could actually see, those of you who are really paying really close attention, you might have been able to see he could actually move the kind of skin on his neck over to really reach all of those feathers, which I think is pretty fantastic. So very, very comfy, relaxed kind of American kestrel right now. It's pretty great. I'm just scrolling back to see if there were any other. I think I saw one or two maybe comments early on. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Just people admiring what you were up to, I think. Awesome. Well, if anyone has any last questions about our American kestrel, I'll see. Right now he seems pretty kind of relaxed and comfy where he's at. But I'll see if, as I have him in this room later, if I can get any pictures of what he was up to earlier on in the video. For anyone who's joining us later on here, at the beginning, he was kind of exploring the room a little bit. We've got a lot of different intentional perches in this room, but we also have some maybe unintentional perches, like a TV monitor, and he was standing on some chairs earlier. And then my favorite was when he had landed on top of the kind of tripod that I have this tablet on right now. So I'll see if I can get a picture of him doing that later that we can post, because it was pretty delightful. It was pretty fantastic watching him kind of figure out some of these new perches in here that he really hasn't really explored in a bit, kind of looking around at all the different perches that are in here. So right now he's just gonna finish preening. So I will say, folks, we'll sign off here, but we will see you next week for more Reading with Raptors. If you wanna see what we're up to in the meantime, keep checking out our Facebook page here. Right now it is baby raptor season, so definitely keep an eye out on our page for more kind of updates and information about what we're all up to and those kind of youngsters that we're seeing in our clinic right now, as well as any information on what you can do to help those young raptors as well. So keep an eye here on Facebook, as well as on our Instagram. We're at The Raptor Center. You can also check out our website at theraptorcenter.org for more information on our online and in-person programs, things like that, all the kind of fun programs and other activities that we are up to right now. Until then, folks, we will see you next week for more Reading with Raptors. Thanks for joining us, everyone.